everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Mind Over Masculinity, the podcast where we challenge the outdated scripts and peel back the layers of modern manhood and have real, vulnerable conversations that actually matters. So today we are diving into one of the deepest intersections of masculinity, I would say, dear listeners. It's the pursuit of purpose, growth, and the mission. Because let's be honest, like too many men are climbing the ladders only to find they are leaning against the wrong wall, right? So for this, definitely joining me today is the man who has not only built the empires but rebuilt himself from the inside out. Please meet Louis Kim. So welcome to the show, Louis.
Thank you very much, Vic. Very, very happy to be here and talk to you about this topic today. It's very near and dear to my heart.
Lovely, lovely, great. Thank you so much for being with us today, Louis. And before we start delving into this lovely topic, I'll love to introduce you to all the listeners. Dear listeners, Louis, the son of Korean immigrants, a builder of over $50 million worth of business, the founder of Yusan Capital and the owner's path. And beyond the boardroom, a spiritual leader, an advocate for healing through um, sacred plant medicine. Yes. So his story is not just about the success, but I'd say it's all about surrender, reinvention,
Mm.
and reclaiming the ownership of your life. Yeah.
I can tell you've done some inner work because you used the
Mhm.
word surrender.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so funny because as men, we're given
Mm,
this notion, you
yeah.
know, in the US, there's a saying that my generation grew up with, which was "buck up, buttercup," and the idea
Yeah.
being that if you feel any pain, suck it up and
Mm,
keep going, and it puts us into this state of thinking we can control everything, and that power and control is the path to being truly a man. And so, when I hear you say the word surrender, I know you've worked on yourself.
exactly, exactly. So, dear listeners, this conversation is gonna be very, very helpful for all of us. So, buckle up because this is going to be both strategic and soulful. So, welcome to the show again.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Amazing. Uh, so, Liz, like I mentioned, obviously you have built multiple businesses, and then you hit the wall. So, uh, I mean, what did that breakdown actually feel like? I mean, uh, what did it teach you about the illusion of success that so many men chase?
You used the perfect word for it. It was illusion.
Mm,
We live in a world, I think it's a global, as we're so
mm,
connected, that there's this belief that happiness and
mm,
fulfillment come on the other side of something. And
mm,
especially in the United States, we're told success is about money, it's about material things, the
mm,
consumerism aspect of it. And the reality is when you get to that point and you can
mm,
have all these nice things, have a nice life, have money in the bank,
mm,
if you're not happy, it just amplifies how unhappy you are. Um, I found when you get
mm,
to that point, if you don't truly connect with yourself internally and really get to that place of centeredness, that when you get there, you'll look in the mirror and realize, what
mm,
does this all mean? Because I thought I was supposed to be happy. And I found myself there a little over a decade ago with after having sold
mm,
a large business and found myself with resources,
mm,
opportunities. And I look back at that version of myself and
mm.
I can't fathom how unhappy I was.
Yeah.
A- and it was you're told that I'm gonna achieve this and I will be
Mm,
happy. And then you get
yeah.
there and you look in the mirror and you're
Mm,
not. And it is crushing. It is crushing because you start to really ask yourself, the question, what does it all mean and why am I here? And it will take you to some dark places.
Exactly, exactly true. Very truly said, yeah. And I mean, on this context, like a lot of men fear, I mean, even acknowledging burnout or kind of emptiness. So, why do you think like we men avoid admitting when their ladder's on the wrong wall?
We we as men, globally, men are statistically at the loneliest levels I think
Mm,
that they've ever been. The suicide rates are higher. A
mm,
lot of it comes from, I believe, men as a whole have
mm,
lost their sense of purpose and mission, about who they are and what
mm,
it means to be masculine. I think this is why in this world today, somebody
mm,
like an Andrew Tate becomes so popular. You know, this
yeah,
false masculinity of bravado and nonsense and ego,
mm,
all of these things that are caricatures of what we think
mm,
masculinity is. But true masculinity is comes from inner strength. The lion doesn't
mm,
have to tell the African jungle or the Sahara that it's the king. The lion
mm,
expresses itself as that when it's needed. But
mm,
most of the time, if you look at what a lion does, a male lion, it sits and
yeah,
it hangs out and it knows exactly what its role is, right? It's
mm,
its mission. And I think the evolution of societies have created a bit of a blur. And I think
mm,
the gender roles are blurred. And this is not for me to say that I think women belong in the kitchen. I just mean that there was a time when gender roles were very
mm,
certain. And that if you go to agricultural or more rural places, and I'm sure it doesn't matter where in the world you are, people are
mm,
very certain about their lives because their roles are very set. This,
yeah,
this person in a marriage goes and earns the living. This person takes
mm,
care of the home. And there's a simplicity to it. But in our modern world of complexity,
mm,
those things have gotten blurred. And I think along the way, what it means to be a man, the expectations of it have not been keeping up with where society is going. And I think a lot of men find themselves isolated. They find themselves uncertain. I know a lot of men myself who feel attacked because they're
mm,
afraid to say things, because they feel as if they're going to be uh, beat up by the woke mafia for what they say, when really they're
mm,
trying to navigate and understand their own place in the world. Um,
yeah,
so I think we're at an inflection point where
mm,
people like yourself, people like me have to speak up to say it's okay to be uncertain and really to
mm,
truly find yourself as a man. You've got to reevaluate. You've got to go inward and understand what it means to be the masculine. Because the masculine energy is about strength, it's about stability,
mm,
it's about protection. It's about all of these things that we should not shy away from. But it also means that as men, we really need to be in touch with our own emotions, and we need to be in touch with what we feel, just
mm,
because just like the lion, right? We have to know when to attack, we
yeah,
have to know when to reserve, and we
mm,
have to know when to be caring and to be the best loving people that we can, because as
mm,
men, the truth is all of those things I just laid out,
mm,
they come from a deep place of love.
yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Yeah. I mean, definitely. I mean, that's where most of us don't even realize the danger zone exists. So, uh, yeah. And also, with the owner's path, you help people literally buy businesses as a path to the freedom. So,
Yeah.
uh, why do you think, or maybe why do you believe that ownership, uh, not just the employment, is definitely it's such a powerful antidote for men's sense of purpose? I mean, if you can share.
Well, I think entrepreneurship is one of the most
Mm,
beautiful things a person can endeavor into.
mm, mm,
You shared with me before we got on here your own story of
mm,
building this network of podcasts and this podcast itself and how it was born from a personal need and has evolved into this place. And I think you'll easily say that
Mm,
this is a purpose and a mission you're driven towards.
mm,
Um, as men in particular, I think we innately have that need to go out into a mission. If
mhm,
you go back as far as ancestral times for us as men, that was our duty, right? We went out. Our communication style as men has evolved because of what our ancestors did. We a lot of times you get into a group of men and sometimes we just literally grunt at each other and we understand each other, right? Um, and so this thing that I'm doing is born out of my own personal need and mission to
mm,
drive and support others. My day job is Yusan Capital. We're a private
mm,
equity firm where we go out and we buy small and mid-sized businesses and we grow them. I was fortunate to have grown up in an entrepreneurial family, and that family taught me a particular skill, and I would love to be able to help others find their purpose. And the path of ownership, I believe, is that. We become passionate about the things we're really good at. And what we do very differently, and what I do very differently there, because it's something it is, I'm very passionate about doing this and supporting it, is helping people find the right fit, understanding what
mm,
their skills are, what they're good at, finding out how they're balanced, and helping them make decisions about the industries they choose, what they can financially afford, and go and become an owner. Because taking that step of ownership, I mean, as you know, leading an
mm,
organization where people rely on you,
mm,
it's a huge and hefty responsibility. It's no longer about just yourself, it becomes about everyone that's there. And so
mm,
I feel it's something very honorable to be able to teach people and go down that road. And when they find it, it's truly remarkable to watch because all of a sudden, this thing that they felt like work that was making them miserable is no longer that. And most people um, evolve very well into the role of ownership because they care so much. And that's what really matters is caring for their people, caring for their customer and getting there. And I think it changes their perspective and it puts them in a role where
mm.
they feel very, very comfortable in a positive way.
I agree. Totally agree on this. And but isn't there also a danger like where ownership becomes another identity trap? Like
Mm.
I mean, trading one prison for the another. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Uh,
Mhm,
my intention when we go through this course and path, this
mm,
apprenticeship that we offer, is to give people the tools to understand that
mm.
what they do
Okay.
will become a bit of a legacy
Mm,
in that it's their impact that they make,
mm.
but that their identity should really be about that
Yeah.
impact as opposed to the business itself. Because I was very much in that place
Mm,
when I reached burnout, where I thought my identity was this business. I thought my identity was the status, and I thought all of those things.
mm,
And when you rely on those things, those are just externalities, right? They're exogenous. They're outside of ourselves, and things outside of ourselves are never that strong. It really is to help people understand internally what is and who they are, in that process of trying to find their fit. And the
mhm,
stronger that person is in their own identity of who they are, their reasons, their whys.
mm.
Um, my I'll call him my mentor, even though I've never met him, but I'm a big student
Okay.
of Tony Robbins. And
Oh.
my favorite statement from him is
Mm,
I'm sorry, reasons come first and answers come second.
yeah.
And so when you're strong in your why and you know what your why is,
Mm,
you won't ever get trapped or you won't ever get lost in the identity because the clarity that you achieve, um,
mm.
it prevents that from happening.
True. Very true. Yeah. And it is really powerful. I mean, ownership is not just the savior. I mean, how we show up to the ownership is actually the transformation. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. And you call yourself a spiritual entrepreneur. So for many men, business and spirituality, for them, it's spirituality feel like oil and water. I mean, so how do you integrate both without diluting either?
I'm laughing because what you said is how I used to feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I believe with what you're doing, you have very much gotten to the same place of understanding
Mm.
that these 2 things can coexist, and I think
Yeah.
this is where the purpose comes into play. You really have to understand why you're doing something, and for me, it took a very long time to reconcile my desire to be entrepreneurial, to
Mm.
build things, to go out there and create value because I had all of these
Mm.
notions in my head about what it meant to make money and about what it meant to, to be a quote unquote business person. And
Mm.
the spiritual path and the growth that I've gone through has led me to the place to understand that my pursuits and what I do
Yeah.
is all about the intention, with the way I wanna feel about it is about the intention and the reasons I do it.
Mm.
And the outside may not know, but inside of my own heart, I know what I'm doing is
Mm.
is purposeful. And so it is a deep path of
Mm.
personal discovery to get there because you really have to know who you are, be able to look in the mirror and truly see yourself. It's something I like to do, and I tell others to do is to really go look at yourself in the mirror. And I don't mean just look at yourself. I mean stand there and look at yourself in the mirror until it becomes uncomfortable.
Mm.
Because once you can get through and get to the point where you continue to look at yourself through the discomfort, you will really start to see
Mm.
yourself. And so this reconciliation is very different for everybody. It's their own individual way. And for
Mm.
me, it was through plant medicines, and it came through a lot of sacred journeys that allowed me to see things in a different light
Mm.
and find that purpose. And once you are aligned, it's
Mm.
amazing the things that you can do with your life.
True. Very true. So also let me play kind of a devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
So uh, some people might say that bringing spirituality into business will softens your edge. So how do you respond to that?
Um, I think,
Uh-huh.
spirituality makes you stronger.
Yeah.
One of the most beautiful things that I've learned from my own spiritual path is the more I am self-aware of
Mm.
myself, the easier it is to see other people. And ultimately, business is about the interactions. And you even the competition, it's about the interactions of individuals and people and that's,
Mm.
for a company, it's at scale, right? It's the number of customer interactions, all of that. And the more that you can be spiritually connected to your purpose and then also to yourself, it is so much easier to see the bigger picture and see another person. And if you can truly see another person, you can understand their needs. And we're ultimately, as entrepreneurs, in the business of meeting people's needs. And I think it makes you sharper, clearer. And it also, when you are connected to your heart and your heart comes first, you can now make this mind of that we have, this beautiful evolved brain that exists. And this brain that doesn't exist in the three-dimensional world, right? Our brain sits within a skull and fluid, and everything it processes comes from these external sensors like the eyes, the ears, the
Mm.
tongue, right? These are the things in the real world, and everything's an interpretation. And the deeper you are connected in the spiritual way, the heightened those senses are in such a way that just makes you more
Mm.
efficient and effective. And I think getting to that point is where anyone who's an entrepreneur will be will be unstoppable because they are being driven by something so much deeper than the mind. Because the mind can take you to dark places, and the mind can actually cause a lot of confusion. Um,
Mm.
there's actually a genetic disorder. if that's what you'll call it, where people, the part of their brain that is part of the decision making process, there's some receptor that disconnects emotion to the decision. And these people that they've studied, it's very rare. They can't even make a decision about what to eat for lunch because
Okay.
they're truly driven by just the mind. And so then their mind goes through these pros and cons and could debate a sandwich forever.
Mhm.
And so we as humans love to say, hey, be rational, make a decision, or, but no decision is ever rational. It's always driven by emotion. And from that end of things, if you want to be the best entrepreneur or the best leader, the more connected to your spiritual path and the more centered you are, the more
Mm,
connected to your heart and body you are as an individual, man, the more unstoppable and effective you'll become.
mm, exactly. That's lovely. Huh. And this is a very, I believe, it's a very common thing. Not common. I mean, everyone, I guess, will be able to resonate with this. Um, Taking from your a background, like you were also the son of Korean immigrants, raised with fierce work ethic. So, uh, I mean, from there, like, if you can share, like, for men who are carrying the generational
Mm,
expectations,
mm.
uh, how do you honor your roots while also still choosing your own path?
Oh my gosh. What a beautiful question. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
I grew up at a time when, for my parents immigrating in the United States, we used to get excited when we saw another Korean person, and my parents would be so happy because they could speak to somebody else that spoke their language. And
Mm,
we're now at a time living outside the Washington D.C. area, and my parents, they avoid the Korean community because of the gossip and the small and some of that. They still love being Korean, but it's just funny how things have evolved. Because I grew up at a time where being Asian in the United States was odd,
mm,
and it was different. And it's funny now to see that Korean culture is considered cool all across the world, so it makes me laugh. Um, Living as the child of immigrants
mm,
at the time that I did and grew up, and I think a lot may still experience this, you feel like you're not Korean enough for the Korean community, but then you're also never American enough for the American
mm,
community. And it's it was a difficult thing to understand that
mm,
and finally embrace that my Koreanness is part of and has shaped who I am, right there.
mm,
Those values that were taught to me by my parents, there's so much of it that was rooted in Korean culture. I mean, one of those things is in Korean, it's called jung, and it's
okay.
considered one of the core Korean values. And the idea that the easiest way to interpret it is to say like an affinity or a connection with others. And so
Okay.
amongst Korean people, there's this feeling of instant connection. So I went to a barbershop the other day, and I wasn't expecting the women there to be Korean. And
Mm,
instantly, everyone has this sort of smile as we're talking because I was the only Korean person. They weren't expecting a Korean person to walk in that day in this neighborhood. And it's part of it's so deeply ingrained in the culture, this connection. And for me, going back to Korea, which I didn't go for the first I didn't go for the first time. I was born here in the US, and so the first time I went, I was in my 30s. Um,
oh.
and that really helped me understand who I was. And it doesn't mean that I'm not American. I will still say till the end,
Mm,
my country is the
mm,
US, and I've fully embraced myself as an American and the values that are here, but my roots and my connection to my Korean heritage is very important to me because that DNA exists within me. And
mm,
while it does not define me wholly, it has shaped me and it is a part of who I am. And learning to embrace and love it
Yeah.
really didn't happen for me until my 30s and when I got to visit. And, as the son of an immigrant in the era that I grew up, the craziest thing in the world was getting off of the plane and taking a taxi in Seoul, and then you start looking around and you go, "Oh my god, everybody looks like me." Uh, I'm sure it's not all that different than the experience of, a lot of
Yeah.
a lot of people here in the United States that are born from
Mm,
to Indian families. If they get an
mm,
opportunity to go back to
yeah.
India, they have a similar thing where it's just like, "Oh my gosh, everybody looks like my family." You know?
Exactly. True. I mean, that's really gold. I mean, obviously, I mean, honoring legacy without becoming hostage to it. So, yeah, I mean, I know many men listening are sitting with right at that crossroad. So, definitely, this is definitely going to resonate for sure. Thank you so much for sharing this. Yeah. Uh, And talking about the real measure of a man, I mean, uh, with everything you have lived, built, lost, rebuilt today, uh, how do you personally define like
Mm,
what makes a man truly, truly successful?
man, Avik,
Mhm.
I really appreciate your
Yeah.
what you're asking. The depth of your own work kind of shows in what you're asking. Um, I believe the only measure of an individual, not just a man, is the impact that they make. And it's what have they done for others and what have they done to leave the world a better place?
True.
You know, I am a true believer that we as humans are meant to be creators and we are meant to be impact driven to make things better. If we as humans weren't in that innate way, I don't think we would have ever evolved out of prehistoric caveman kind of ways. We became communities and civilizations because there was a need to connect with others and a need to help build and create something. And I'm sure some of it was driven just from pure survival, but we wouldn't have evolved in this way if there wasn't that native place to be where we want to support each other, right?
Mm,
And create communities. Um, I really think the impact that we make is the most important thing. It's why the name of my firm, Yusan Capital, Yusan in Korean literally means inheritance, but it also means the legacy, like what you leave behind for the next generation. A- a- And in particular,
mm,
I think for a man, the most important thing I think a man can do is to help and leave the impact of just being a leader. And when I say leader, it
mm,
doesn't mean, you have to be in front of 1,000 people or in a
mm,
crowd and leading hundreds of other individuals. It means leading even yourself in such a way that
yeah.
you create a sense of care, understanding for the people around you, and you
Mm,
make them feel safe and protected, and then you make them feel understood, right? As a man, it's so interesting as men, we're not really seen with wisdom
mm,
until we're much older, right?
true.
We're not treated with that reverence and respect about what we
Mm,
can learn until we're well into our 60s and 70s. And
mm,
and so I think the greatest thing that we can do as men is focus on our impact that we make on others and the people around us, and especially to the women in our lives and,
yeah.
not just I mean, first our wives, our partners, and then our
Mm,
our children and our family, um, because our role is very important, just as important as the feminine, but we need to be strong in our ability to create that foundation and then
mm,
really create a lasting impact with everyone around us.
yeah. Very true. Yep. And and also like if you had one I'd say one truth uh to plant a seed into every man who is listening right now, what that would be?
I believe every person on the face of this planet, so billions of people, have been imparted within themselves, their soul, a gift. And that gift is what I call their individual greatness. And whether you want to call it the God, infinite intelligence, the universe, the
Mm,
whatever your beliefs are, this has
mm,
been given to you when you were born. And I believe the greatest thing that person can do is to fulfill that greatness. We have to learn how to hear that voice within us. And in a modern world where the
mm,
cacophony drowns everything out, we've gotta take those steps to
mm,
quiet the noise so we can hear what's within ourselves, and that's that greatness. And when I say greatness, it's the same thing. It doesn't mean having to be on the stage, run for office, become a billionaire. Those are just the perceptions that we adopt because of media. But I'm talking
mm,
about the greatness, and for some people, that greatness might be the greatest gardener, right?
yeah,
This person just knowing what they're great at in that place, or a painter, a
mm,
shipbuilder, even as something as someone who is just has so much pride and
mm,
and care in laying down floor. Whatever that
mm,
thing is, there's a greatness, and if
mm,
we look for it and we filter the noise,
mm,
we'll find it. And I think that is the one thing, and that would be the one seed, if you're listening to this, is that I promise
mm,
you it exists. Go seek it. And when you find it, you'll understand what I'm saying. And that
mm,
will truly be a sense of purpose and happiness that you cannot, that nothing around you can destroy.
mm. True. Exactly. I agree. Totally agree. Oh, lovely. That's really lovely. And I mean, I have to say this that that's why we do this show. I mean, it's not uh, about perfect men. It's all about the present men. So, uh, yeah, that's the main motto behind this. So, Lewis, thank you so much for showing up today, and not just as an entrepreneur, but as a man who has truly walked through the, I mean, fire and come out from more whole. So, uh, yeah, lovely. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, and uh, for everyone who is listening right now, purpose is not just handed to you. I mean, right? Isn't just handed to you. You build it. You fail into it. You surrender into it. You own it,
Mm.
but from inside out, right? So that's great. So, Louis, like, I mean, if someone wants to connect with you, what would be the best medium?
Yeah, there's a couple ways people can reach out to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on TikTok and Instagram at just parts of Lou. That's my nod to Anthony Bourdain, who, as a storyteller, I think is sort of my spirit animal.
Okay.
And then you can reach out to us at theownerspath.com. There's a contact form, and people can reach out. And I say this with absolute um, authenticity, and say that if someone is seeking help, especially if you're a man who is finding and struggling, don't hesitate to fill out that contact form, because I'm happy to email and respond, because a lot of great people help me along the way. And I always want to be supportive of someone else's path.
Amazing, amazing. So, dear listeners, I'll put all the links into the show notes for your easy reference. And if this conversation has planted a seed, then share it. Start the dialogue and start healing, because, um, and also start owing your path. So, with this hope, until next time, this is your host Avik signing off from Mind Over Masculinity. Keep rising and keep becoming. So, thank you so much.